Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ask Ken show. How's everyone doing today? Good to see you. Good to see you, Iona.
Welcome. Glad to be back.
Yeah, it's great to have you.
Hmm.
Today's going to be a fun day on the Ask Ken show. I'm super excited. We have a whole bunch of questions lined up. Uh, it's always a pleasure doing this once a month. It's a great place to be able to live channel any questions about spirituality, and it's also a great place to a great forum for basically people to ask their spiritual questions and yeah, and show for example of any of my students or anyone interested in learning to channel how you can live channel and make it like an everyday normal part of your life. And that's one of my goals and missions, is to normalize channeling. And if you want to be all spiritual and woo woo and all that stuff, that's great. But if you want to be like a normal regular person, keep your job and pay your bills and do all the earthly stuff, you can do that as well. So everyone's welcome. Yeah. Let's jump right into it.
Yeah,
Let's
let's do this.
start.
All right. So, first question we have on the list is most of the time I see my guides, but sometimes I can only feel them. Why is this?
Yes. So there's a number of different ways that we can our spirit guides can connect with us, and it depends. There's a number of reasons why. So I know some of you may have heard of these before, but just bear with me until, and then I'll wrap it all together. So there's six clairs. They're called clair abilities or clairs, the way that our spirit guides connect with us or try to communicate with us, try to get our information to us. And the six clairs are in any order, it doesn't matter the order, but clairvoyant, which is clear seeing, clairaudient, which is clear hearing, clair sentient, which is sensing, feeling, and emotions. And then there's clairalience, clear smelling, clairgustance, clear like tasting, and then there's clear sentient, which or clear cognizant, sorry, clear cognizant, which is the clear knowing. So those are the different six clairs that people that our spirit guides could try to get a hold of us. And depending on which spirit guide it is, different spirit guides might try to get our attention or try to communicate with us through different clairs. And that's really important to know, because oftentimes when people are trying to channel, they have one or two strong clairs. And like sometimes people, they've heard about the clairs, but they haven't actually really practiced them or had someone take them through it. So what happens is subconsciously we just rely on our one or two strongest clairs as we're receiving messages, and we don't really realize that, oh, there's a whole bunch of other different ways that our spirit guides can communicate with us. So in this example, this person who asked is, I'm seeing them quite often, but rarely, very rarely do I feel them. It could be a number of reasons. One is because they might not just be aware that they should actually try to feel their presence, but then the other reason is because they might not be actually attuned to those sensitivities. So those are the two main reasons why they might not be feeling it. So what I encourage my students to do is try to practice all the different clairs, because let's say, for example, this spirit guide comes in and wants to communicate with you through clairaudient. If you're trying to force them to be like clairvoyant, like show me images in my mind, show me what you're talking about, and they're just like, but they're trying to communicate with you clairaudiently, then you're not going to receive the messages that they're trying to get through to you. Whereas another spirit guide might want to come in and communicate with you through, let's say, clairsentient. That's sensing sensations, feelings, emotions, things like that. But if you're not available or open to that, then you're just trying to force them to communicate to you through clairvoyant. Then you're not going to be receiving the messages, the full message that you could possibly when you are open to all the different clairs, is basically my point. So it takes a bit of practice. And then there's also like healing and clearing that also helps. I'll give you an example. Is way back in the day, so spirituality is actually quite a large in disciplines. There's lots of different disciplines or subtopics with spirituality. And way back in the day when I first started getting into spirituality, I was more into like channeling and meditation and shadow work and other kinds of things like that. And then somebody, maybe about 10 years later, they introduced me to crystals. Like I've heard of crystals and all that, but I never really did anything. And then somebody introduced me and started getting me into crystals. And they would put like this crystal in my hand and they'd go, "Oh, what do you feel?" And I'm like, "I don't know, nothing." Like to me, it's just a hunk of rock. Like I feel nothing. And they could put all these different like crystals in my hand, and I would still feel nothing. And it's because I wasn't like sensitive or attuned to feeling those nuances or those subtleties from the crystals at that time in my journey. But what I did was I kept practicing, I kept doing my healing and clearing. And then over time, like now, if I touch a crystal, I'm just like, oh my God, it's like, whoa, right? Like, I'm like, can you feel this? It's incredible. And here's another one. I'm playing with all my crystals now. But, you know, and Iona has a whole bunch of crystals there, so don't get her started. We'll be here all day with the crystals. So it's the same similar concept with channeling your spirit guides or any spirits is we want to keep practicing over and over to hone our sensitivities to these different clairs. And that's really important because then over time you start to get more competent and more skilled at feeling those nuances from your spirit guides, and then you can interpret those into spirit guide messages from your spirit guides. So, for example, this guide comes in, and they're like, over time with practice, and that's why it's good having like a mentor or actual formal training because trying to figure it out on your own, you can do it, but it's a little bit difficult, and it could take a long period of time. But let's say this guide wants to come in, and they're here to, tell you what they like messages say about work or career or something like that. And so, because you've practiced the clairs, you can hear their voice in your mind, and it's different than your own thoughts, and it's completely different than your own thoughts. Let's say it's a masculine with a deeper voice, and maybe he speaks more like monotone. Maybe he speaks a little bit slower and more regular and more direct and to the point, but you can hear that his voice in your mind. And then this way, you can actually hear the messages he's trying to give you for guidance in your career. And then you might get another spirit guide that comes in and she helps you with um, let's say relationships, and she's wanting to communicate with you through clairsentient, which is emotions, and you're open to that and you're sensitive to that. And the reason why she's trying to communicate to you through emotions is because she's trying to get you to feel more empathy and more compassion for the relationship struggles that you're going through, if you're going through any stuff like that. And so that's an example of where if you're just open to all the different clairs, you're not trying to force your spirit guides to communicate with you a certain way. You're just allowing them to communicate whichever way that they want to benefit you the most. And in this case, oh, I can feel her. Okay, so be more compassionate, Ken. Stop being so hard on them and stop judging them or whatever, and be a bit more understanding of where they're coming from and why they're behaving this way. And maybe don't take it personally or don't get so upset about it and stuff like that. So that's how they can communicate these messages. Yeah, good question.
Good question.
Yeah, so everyone, if anyone's watching, welcome to the Ask Ken show. This is a monthly event that I do once a month where it's a forum where you can type in. So, two things. If you're watching right now, just in the chat box, just type in your name and where you're from. I'll give you a shout out. And then the second thing is if you have any questions about spirituality, anything you would like to know about spirituality, just go ahead and type that question in the chat box, and then Iona will read it to me, and then I will live channel the answers live here on the air.
Sounds good. All right. So I'm going to go on to the next question. Why, in your opinion, is learning to channel at advanced levels the foundation to all spirituality?
Yeah, I'm very passionate about this. Way back in the day, um, when I started channeling in 2004, or started like entering into the spiritual industry and spiritual realm and starting to like delve into this stuff. I had no clue what I was doing. I was guessing on a lot of things. Um, I was just taking people's word when I would, hear other people speak, whether it's online, read a spiritual book, a blog, whatever it might be, or listen to like a video, YouTube video, stuff like that. And I would just blindly believe everything that people were saying. I had no clue. I was just going along with it. And what I came to realize many, many years later was, like, what did I need the most in my early days of my spiritual awakening? And in my opinion, it was channeling. I needed someone to teach me how to channel, teach me how to channel properly, and teach me how to channel at very advanced levels. Why? Because in my opinion, channeling is the foundation to all spirituality. If you don't have channeling, you're just guessing, you're winging it, or it's sporadic, or it's, maybe you sense a presence around you, but you don't really know what it is. It might be good for you, it might not be good for you. Sometimes people, they try to set the intention. Oh, I only channel things of the light, my ancestors, and good. And that sounds good in theory. I have found that doesn't actually work. Sometimes what happened with me is inadvertently I would be channeling things that are potentially like nefarious, not of the light, not healthy for me, and had no idea on this. And because I was naive and I had no one to teach me this or train me
Mhm.
this, and so I was like, "Oh, are you good for me?" And they're like, yeah, of course, yeah, sure, I'm good for you," and all that stuff. And they weren't, and I had no clue. Like,
Mhm.
so I did and started channeling them, and then next thing you know, they were telling me to do these things, and it would turn out good for a while. And then they would tell me to do this other thing, and then I would do it, and it would turn out horrible. And I'd be like, what? I don't get it. Like, I thought, you were, someone good for me. And they're like, yeah, yeah, I am. I'm like, well, why did this not turn out good? And then I would go along in my journey, and then I would be channeling, and then things would be going good. Things would be going good. And then they would tell me to do this other thing, and then I would do this other thing, and it would turn out horribly. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, I thought you were here for my good. And I realized that they were being deceitful, and I was like, right? And I didn't realize it. And then
Mhm.
there's a whole bunch of stories I could tell, like, about in my early days where these things were coming in and they were not of the light, and it got really, 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 really bad, where I almost went into like a depressed state. And eventually, like, after years and years of this and not knowing, you know if I should listen to them or not listen to them, thought I was going crazy. I had no one to talk to about this. And then there were times I was even suicidal, like, it was that bad. And because they would get me to break up with my girlfriend or get into an argument with my boss, and I would have real life world consequences, that was really affecting me in the real world. So it wasn't like it was just behind the scenes spiritual stuff. And
Mhm.
so, um, out of that darkness, I call them the dark days, but it was really like the dark years. I was like, okay, Ken, I need to figure this out. So then what I realized and started to figure out and discern the differences between all the different kinds of souls and all the different kinds of beings. So there's a whole bunch of different kinds of souls that we can channel. Things like random souls, ascended master souls, um, loved ones, soul family members, spirit guides, and then there's also other things like lost souls and stuff like that. And then we can also like channel things like beings that they don't have souls. So beings, examples of beings could be like sprites or fairies or pixies, crystal divas, dragons, angels, and so on and so on. And then there's other celestial beings and other beings that of the earth and stuff like that. Some are of the light and some are not. And when you don't know how to channel, you could just be channeling any random thing, and it could be telling you to do this and do that. And you're like, oh, okay, I guess. Who told you to do that? Oh, spirit. Well, who's spirit? I don't know, just spirit. Well, that's at base levels, that's okay. But not like for beginners, that's okay. But eventually you want to get to a point where you know who you're channeling all the time, and if it's of the light, if it's good for you, if it's not good for you. And that's super, super, super critical to spirituality, because if you want to get into spirituality, you're going to have spirits around you. That's why it's called spirituality. So you need to always know who you're channeling. That's the number one thing that I emphasize to my students as we're going through the curriculum, is get to a point where you always, always, always know who you're channeling. And I'll teach you that. I'll teach you how to discern and differentiate between
Mhm.
all these different souls and differentiate between all these different beings. So therefore, when something not of the light comes across your path, don't go looking for them. But if they come across your path, I'll teach you how to identify them, and then how to, like, what to do with them, and make sure that you can get rid of them so that they don't affect you in a negative way. And then one of the biggest reasons that I teach my students It's not the only reason, but one of the biggest reasons I teach my students to channel their spirit guides first and get to know the spirit guide team is because once you get to know your spirit guide team, they're a trusted source. You know them really well. You know they're of the light. They will always, always, always have your highest and greatest good in mind. They will never do anything bad to you or harmful to you. They only have your good in like greatest good in mind. So if you ever think you're getting a guidance from your spirit guides and you follow that guidance and it turns out bad, that's not your spirit guides. That was either you or you channeled something else. But once you get to know your spirit guide team really well, then when something else comes in and wants to communicate with you, you can ask a trusted source, one of your spirit guides, okay, should I channel this? Is this of the light? Is it good for me to channel? And if your spirit guides say no, then don't do that. Use the expulsion command, expel them, get rid of them. And then if your spirit guides are like, yeah, yeah, that's fine, you can channel them. They're like maybe a loved one or a soul family member or maybe a new spirit guide. And you're like, okay, that's fine. And then go ahead and channel them. But always, always, always check with your spirit guide team. They will let you know if something is good and safe for you to channel.
Perfect. I know, yeah, like that was one of the biggest things for me because, like, for years, I wanted to really get into like channeling and psychic mediumship and all of that. Um, but I was afraid of what was going to come in, and then I kind of reconnected with you and stuff and found out that this is what you were doing and that. And after that, it was like, yeah, no, I need to take his courses because this is what I really want to do.
Yeah,
And I highly recommend his courses. Like, they have taught me so many things. And yes, and exactly, like, to do it in a safe manner. And that I know what I'm channeling and what's coming through, and to be able to identify that so that I'm always, you know, working with my guides and
yeah.
stuff, and yeah,
I
doing
I
it
want to
better.
I want to clarify something that's really important because sometimes I have people, and it's usually sometimes it's them, my new students or whatever, but oftentimes it's like family members or other friends, and they're like, "Oh no, no, don't do that channeling course because you're going to open yourself up to all these things that could, you can
Mhm.
open yourself up to things that are bad or wrong." So I want to just that's a myth. That's not accurate. That's not true. Why?
Yeah.
Because we've been channeling all our life.
Yep.
Everybody channels, all the 7 or 8 billion people on this planet. Everybody channels. And so even if you don't take a course like this, like one of my courses or someone else's course or whatever, you're still going to be channeling. But the thing is, you won't know who you're channeling and what's coming in. And so the two things that I do is I teach people how to know what they've been doing all their life, which is channeling. Like, have you ever given somebody a message and they're like, "Oh, how did you know to
Mhm.
how did you know to say that? Like, that's exactly what I needed to hear." It's most likely because
Mhm.
you were channeling their spirit guide and you were passing a message along to them. So we've all been channeling. All of us channel all our life. We all have been. And so I teach you to know and be cognizant or aware of what you've been doing your whole life. And then the second thing I do is I teach you how to do it at very advanced levels and safely. So, because if you don't learn how to do it safely, you can still be channeling. If you never take any course ever, you can still channel things that are not of the light. And
Mhm.
I'm going to say a statement, but you have to take it into context. Like, for example, there might be, if you go to a homeless section of a city in North America or Europe or something like that, and you see all the homeless people there could be people there that are inadvertently channeling things that are not of the light, and they're, causing them, affecting them in a negative way. And if we were to clear that soul or being that's not of the light off of that person, then the homeless person, for example, could actually, start to think properly and make healthier decisions because they don't have this thing not of the light affecting them, as an example. So these things can actually affect people and
Yeah.
have real world consequences. And if those people learned how to channel, then they could make sure that doesn't happen again, because they
Right.
know how to identify these things. They know what to do with it if it comes across their path. So this whole myth about, oh, if I take a channeling course or try to learn how to channel, then I'm opening myself up into this. And I don't disagree with that. There's some if you one thing I emphasize to my students: do not dabble in the dark stuff when it comes to spirituality. Don't go
Mhm.
dabbling in it. Don't go looking. You're going to get yourself into trouble. You play with fire, you're going to get burned. So stay away
Mhm.
from that stuff and just work and operate in the light, hence the term light workers. And I'm very
Yeah.
strict on that with my students. So, but you need to know what you're doing. You need to know how to do it safely and properly, and that's really important. It's kind of like, you want to learn about construction and how to build a house and stuff like
Yeah.
that. On the first day, I'm not going to go, okay, here's a power saw. Go ahead, good luck with that. And then, you end up, someone gets injured because they don't know what they're doing. I'm
Hmm.
start you off with like screwdrivers and then eventually like hammers and stuff like that, and then we'll get into the power tools later.
Hmm.
Yeah, good
Yeah,
point.
and also like knowing who you're channeling. I think that's the real big key, is being able to identify and be able to ask those questions and know, when they're being untruthful, because
Yeah.
nobody from the dark side, nothing from the dark side is ever going to tell you, oh yeah, I'm from the dark side. Like, you know, they're always going to tell you, oh yeah, no, I'm good for you. Yeah, yeah, no, like we're doing
Yeah.
this purely for your best intention. Yep, yep, yep.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and then
always.
when you know your spirit guide team, you can verify if this thing is actually being deceitful or nefarious or whatever, and then they will let you
Yeah.
know. And then there's a few other techniques that I teach as well, like there's the hand motion exercise, and there's other ones where you can, something feels off, okay, and then you do the expulsion command, this command that I created that I give out to my students in level 2, so stuff like that. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm. Yep. Highly recommend his courses. Definitely take them if you're interested in looking into spirituality. So let's get on to the next question. What is the difference between your heart center and your soul? Because they're kind of in the same area there.
Yeah, yeah, good question. Okay, heart center. I'll just go and go through it here. So we have our heart center, heart chakra. We have our solar plexus chakra, and then right in between, right where your sternum is. So right in between, where your rib bones meet at the bottom, and that's where your soul resides. Um, that's what's called the seat of your soul in many philosophies, many. Uh, Basically, when I was trained by a Zen master, they talked about, like, taught us about the seat of the soul. I was trained by him for 2 years, and yeah, it's really really powerful to know the difference between like different parts of your body. So, like, when I'm working with somebody, sometimes I want them to be more heart centered, and that's great. That's wonderful. Okay, so more heart centered. And there's a time and place, like where, let's say, for example, they're going through grief, and sometimes I feel that grief in their heart area, and that's why they call it like a heartache or a heartbreak. Whether a grief could be, breaking up with a loved girlfriend or boyfriend or something like that, a partner. Grief could be, losing your job, and you lose your identity, or you feel that you lose your identity. It could be also, grief can come in so many ways,
Hmm.
including, like when I moved cities, I didn't realize how much I grieved the city I used to live in this case, Winnipeg. I took me like 10 years, and I was at a retreat, actually that Zen retreat. And I was like, I remember I climbed up into a tree, and I was looking out in the tree, and I was looking west or east towards Winnipeg, and I just started bawling and bawling and bawling. And I didn't realize that I had grieved. I had never grieved Winnipeg, and I missed home. I missed my family. I missed the society. I missed the city that I grew up in. And so grief can also be, of course, losing a loved one or a pet, or a whole bunch
Hmm.
of forms. And so oftentimes when I scan people through what I call medical mediumship, I can see that pain in this area in the heart center. And then I get the person, my client, through healing modalities, to breathe into the heart center, and then release that grief or that pain in the heart, like that heartache. And then and then fill it with love and light, to try to like fill that void. So it's, they, because they just lost whatever it is, whether it's their
Hmm.
job or their identity or their loved one or whatever it is. And then the solar plexus, which is just below. So there's solar plexus, and then, sorry, heart center, and then solar plexus. And oftentimes that is for somebody like when they don't feel like empowered, when they don't feel like they maybe they're at a job situation where they're being like snuffed down and they feel like they don't have a say in anything, or it could be a relationship that's like that, or it could just be like through life being beaten down through life, and then they're trying to maybe start a business or start whatever spiritual endeavors, and they don't feel like. So what I'll do is I'll get them to breathe into the solar plexus region, and then really just like, okay, feel that power. You are empowered. You can do this, and start to build that up, and in that area. And then in between is our right where the sternum is our soul, and our soul is the most important part of us that makes us up as a human. Like if our soul leaves our body will just basically collapse and fall over and be lifeless, because the thing that was operating the body is the soul. That's the part of us and aspect of us that operates it. So it's really important as a not just a channeler, but just like as a human being, to go ahead and tune into our soul on a regular basis and get to know our soul. What does my soul feel like? What are the texture, the characteristics, the attributes of my soul? How do I know if it's trying to communicate with it? So I call it like the quiet whisper of the soul. And that's where, the soul isn't one of those aspects that's really loud. It's not in your face. It's just this quiet whisper behind the scenes where you have to kind of really tune into it, be quiet, and feel into it. And the most important thing about the soul is your soul will let you know like why you're here, like what's the trajectory that you're on, where are you meant to go in your life, what's my soul's purpose, and on and on and on. And so you can keep, if you if you're like not quite sure, like what am I supposed to do with this lifetime, like why am I here, what's my purpose, that's where you go to your soul. Your soul will give you those answers. And then there's a bunch more other things you can do that's a bit more complex that I do with my students in later levels, like working with your higher self and your spirit guides to collaborate with your soul to really find out why you're here, what you're meant to do with this lifetime. It's really powerful. It's really cool. But please, 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 if there's one thing I can um, emphasize to my students, is connect with your soul on a regular basis. Iona, guess what I did with my soul this morning?
Oh, you told it that you loved it.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah. So every morning when I wake up, I do three things. I put my hand on my soul. I tell my soul I love you over and over again. The second thing I do is I feel grateful. I feel grateful for life, for where I'm at, what I do, like where I'm at in my life, or just whatever, like anything and
Mhm.
everything I feel grateful for. It could be the bed that I'm laying on or whatever it is. It could be for people in my life. It could be anything. And then the third thing that I do is I connect, see who's around me for my spirit guides, connect with them, connect with my spirit guides, see if they have any messages for me, and then start my day. But I do that every day. I've been doing that since I started doing that in 2009 was when I began doing that. So I don't know how many years that is, but a lot. And I haven't missed a day. Every single morning before I touch my phone, before I look at my phone, before I go to the washroom, I always put my hand on my soul and tell my soul I love you. And why do I do that? Because in my opinion, self love can solve a whole lot of problems. Well, like you know, um, a lot of times people are really sensitive or touchy, like any little thing will upset them or bother them, and it's because they don't love themselves enough. Like that's not the only reason potentially, but that's could be one of the contributing reasons. And I know this from personal experience. I also know this from all the students I've helped. And once my students start telling themselves I love you over and over again, and they make it a regular practice, then these things on the outside, when they happen, they don't seem to bother us on the inside anymore, because we love ourselves so much. And so there's this one example of a guy way back in the day, and he's this like the super enlightened guy. And this one time I said something really mean to him, and he stopped and he looked at me and he said, Ken, if I didn't love myself as much as I do, that might actually hurt. And I just like I was like totally jarred. I didn't know what to say. I was like just like what do I say to that, like how do I even respond, right? But I never forgot his words, and there's some truth to that. Like, if I love
Mhm.
myself so much, then what other people say or do just won't affect me, because I'm basically overflowing with so much self-love that this stuff doesn't bother me anymore. And so ever since then, I've been working like extra hard on, self love, and I do it every single day. And if I screw up and make a mistake, which I do because I'm human, what do? Okay, okay, you silly guy, dummy, whatever. I love you anyways, and I just love myself through it. And I try to make amends or try to make things right. I try to make things better. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't, but I don't beat myself up anymore. I'm not hard on myself. I don't say mean things to myself. Those days are over. But what do? I love myself through it. Okay, screwed up,
Yeah.
silly person. Okay, love myself anyway, and just be gentle. So please, people, be gentle with yourself. Try to be kind to yourself. Try to tell yourself I love you every day. It's a great way to live. Yeah, and do self care as well. Take care of your health, take care of your body, take care of your mental health. Only watch and put good things into your mental health. Put good things into your like sphere of influence, like your friends, people you hang out with. Try to be around relatively positive people. I mean, everybody has their ups and downs, but overall, if they're
Mhm.
positive, then those are the kind of people I only hang out with. Um, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's definitely important to have that self-love. And just to touch base on like how you were saying, when he said like, if I didn't love myself so much, then it would, that might have hurt me and stuff. Like it's yeah, you reach once you have enough self-love for yourself, then you stop looking for it elsewhere, right?
that
Like
too.
you
Yeah.
stop you stop seeking love from other people, and you stop worrying about what other people think and stuff, because you start to realize that it really doesn't matter. Like it's how you love yourself that's the most important, right?
Yeah, that's really beautifully said. Like, ideally, when we're with somebody, we want to be whole and complete, and we do that by filling our cup with self love, and then we
Hmm.
meet someone else who's whole and complete, and then when we come together, we have two whole people coming together, and not two needy people. And if we have two people that don't feel whole and complete, what does that cause?
Codependency.
That's right, codependency, where one's dependent on the other, or the worst case scenario is where both are reliant on each, like dependent on each other. Yeah, we don't want that either.
Yeah, no.
So that's
No.
the ideal situation. But we don't worry about the other person. Just focus on yourself. If you're in a relationship right now,
Hmm.
just focus on filling yourself with self love every day. I love you. I love you. And if you're single, even more reason to do this. So not if you meet someone, but when you meet someone, you're coming into that relationship more whole, more complete, because and more self love. So that when you do meet someone, you're not needing them to fill anything. And then if
Yeah.
let's say that person's like, oh, I'm going to go back to my home city to visit my family for a month, and you're like, oh, okay, no problem, I'll miss you or whatever, but I'll be fine. And you are fine because you're whole, you're complete, and you don't need them. And then
Yep.
that person comes back, and then when you're together, you complement each other. You don't need each other, but you complement each other and help and amplify each other. Synergetic. And then if let's say you need to go away for a few weeks, so you go somewhere, and the other person's like, okay, no big deal, like, I'll miss you, but I'm fine, I'll be fine, because they are fine, because they're whole, they're complete. And then you come back,
Mhm.
and woohoo, we're back together, and you keep building together in a synergetic way, and it's awesome. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Really
but
great way.
do your part, and if the other one person doesn't, that's okay, or your child or whoever it is, that's okay. Just focusing on your part and doing your own self-love, telling yourself I love you.
Yeah. At some point, they're going to start asking, what are you doing?
Yeah.
They're going to start seeing that. Hey, why doesn't this bother you? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a gazillion other healing modalities out there, and keep doing those along the way. Like attend my
Mhm.
Ascension group healing or whatever, go to other healers or do your own. If you have any healing modalities, do them on yourself along the way. I do, and I also see other healers as well. And in addition to that, while I'm doing all that other stuff, I'm telling myself I love me, and doing that as a foundational kind of self-love exercise and self-healing exercise. Yeah. Thank you
Yeah.
for that, Iona.
Recommend his Ascension Healing group. I attend it personally, like monthly, and yeah, every month it definitely helps reconnect. It helps just kind of heal it takes you to that next level, and it just constantly keeps you in a better place um, on your journey of spirituality, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and a whole bunch of spiritual upgrades I usually give as well,
Yes.
which is super
Tons of
cool.
upgrades.
The
It's great
purpose
to see.
the purpose of the healing and clearing is to clear you out, keep you clean and clear so you can be a better channeler, but also a better member of society. And then the
Yeah,
purpose of the spiritual upgrades is if your curve is like this, your growth curve is like this, the spiritual upgrades help to uh, basically accelerate that curve, make that curve,
accelerated.
yeah,
Yeah.
higher, increased, so that you're not like trudging around through the trenches for decades. You can really
Yeah.
like, you know, the analogy I use for the spiritual upgrades, so they could be attunements, activations, all sorts of other enhancements that I give, is think of it like a car, like a, let's say you have a Honda Civic, and you might take that Honda Civic and you might take the carburetor out, put a souped up carburetor in there that's more powerful, and now the car can go faster and quicker. And then you might upgrade the suspension or the exhaust, or and on and on and on, the spark plugs and so on. So that's the purpose of the spiritual upgrades, is to give you the capacity to do things at a much higher much higher level, so that you
Hmm.
can channel and do crazy amazing spiritual things that you would have never been able to do without those spiritual upgrades.
Yeah.
And they come in many different forms. Like there's a gazillion different upgrades that can help with your, like, let's say for example, you want to channel more energy through your hands. So whether it's in person or at a distance, a spiritual upgrade could really help you and be able to do that. It could be maybe you need a spiritual upgrade to clear crystals, and not just clear crystals, but also activate crystals. So I do that in level 4,
Hmm.
where I actually take my students through that, where I teach them how to do that. But in order to do that, they need the spiritual upgrade, the activation, or the attunement, to be able to be attuned, to be able to do that and clear the crystals and then activate the crystals. So stuff like that. Yeah. And I could just go on and on. Super cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's always cool to see who comes in. The
Yeah.
Pleiadians, Arcturians, and then the angels and dragons, and all types of really cool things come in to help.
Yeah. Yeah. Palladians and
Yep.
Arcturians. Yeah. Yeah. You got it. Awesome.
Yep. All right. So we're going to go on to the next question. So, how do you tell if a soul family member is incarnated or in a spirit form?
Um, how can you tell if a soul family member is incarnated or in spirit form? Um, so let me just look at that question. Um, there's a number of different. Okay, I get this quite often where people ask me, they're like, "Oh, can this incarnated human, like this person, a friend or whatever, a mentor, can they be my spirit guide?" It's not that the answer is not no. They can be, and they're not, but they're not technically like a spirit guide. So spirit guides are in spirit form.
Mhm.
Um, Hence the reason, like, why they're called, that's the name. So it's really important as channelers that you get very 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 specific when you're talking about different things, like what you're channeling. Because if you're just like, oh, spirit this, spirit that, well, who's spirit? I don't know, just spirit. Well, that's okay for beginners, but that's not good enough when you get to higher, more advanced levels. And again, like I talked about earlier, that could be very dangerous if you just, I don't know, just spirit. Well, that's not good enough, right? And we need to know, when a person is incarnated, they could be a member of your soul family. And then while they're incarnated, they could be a mentor who can help you and support you and can have a major positive impact in your life. But they're not technically spirit guides, but they could be members of your soul family that also. So they could be, yeah, like an incarnated human who's here to help and mentor you. So I would call them more like a mentor. Whereas spirit guides are members of your soul family. While you're incarnated, certain members of your soul family help and assist you. Those are technically spirit guides. And also, you've had usually past lives with them, not just on this planet, but usually other planets, which is super cool. Um, and um, can you read that question again, Iona?
Yeah. How do you tell if if a soul family member is incarnated or in spirit form?
Yes. Okay, so let's say, for example, your loved one, I don't know, let's say grandpa dies and he crosses over and he goes back to the astral realm. Two things: he might be a member of your soul family, he might not. Okay, so we don't guess. When you learn how to channel, you can actually check: is grandpa, is his soul, him, are we members of the same soul family? Yes or no. And if he isn't, that's okay. There's lots of loved ones that we have that we're really close to, people that are incarnated that we're really close to. Like I have a lot of friends that we're not members of the same soul family, but we're still really close. We hang out, we get together, and we have lots of fun together. We laugh. It's just a great time and all that. But um, when someone is in spirit form and they cross over, they go to the astral realm, and they're usually two separate, like either they're a member of your soul family or they're a member of someone else's soul, like they're just a member of a different soul family, and that's okay as well. And so then how do we tell if they've, let's say 5 years go by, grandpa's died, he's crossed over, he's in the astral realm, how do we know, like 5 years later, if he's incarnated or not? So there's a technique that I teach in level 2. It's called Unavailable Souls. Is the module, the section that I go through. And let's say you try to tune into Grandpa, and then all of a sudden you find out Grandpa's not available. He's nowhere to be found, and you're like, well, where is he? You're trying to search for him in the astral realm, and you're trying to look for him, but he's not. You're not finding him. That's most likely because he has chosen to incarnate again, and you can also ask your spirit guides. But once Grandpa has chosen to incarnate, he's no longer available anymore as a soul. You can't contact him. You can't communicate with him. You can't go track him down. And there's a reason for this. And the reason is because when a soul is in spirit form in the astral realm, they work with their soul family members, usually ascended masters from the soul family, to create what's called a blueprint for the next lifetime that they're going to incarnate into. And so when, let's say, for example, Grandpa decides he's going to incarnate this lifetime coming up, he's going to incarnate in India with a different family, Earth family, be born through a different mother in a different society, and all that. And he's created a whole set of different contracts, deals, agreements, Akashic record stuff, and life's purpose. It's very complex, like a new blueprint for his soul, and on and on and on. And so we're not able to, us as incarnated humans, aren't able to go track Grandpa down in India. Why? Because he has this whole new set of reasons for incarnating, and we don't, in spirit form or spiritually, there's a law where we wouldn't, they don't want us to interfere into his life. Does that make sense? We don't want to go in there and start like dabbling and changing the whole trajectory and the purpose of why he chose to incarnate in this next lifetime, which is totally different than the last lifetime.
Right.
Yeah, so we don't like that. There's basically interference, is what it's called. Like you don't want to interfere. And let's say, for example, if
Right.
this was allowed, and you tune into Grandpa and you go, okay, where did Grandpa incarnate? Oh, in India, in this village. So you fly over to India, and then you go to this village, and you knock on this door, and then you see this baby, and you're like, oh, there's Grandpa, and the mother and father are like, you, like, what are you doing here? And like, f off, get lost, we don't
Crazy,
want
crazy
your
person, crazy
person.
person.
Even if not, you don't have the right to like go there and start to,
Yeah.
direct the life of this new baby, because this new baby has chosen a new path to go on, and new parents and new situation, circumstance,
Right.
society, and so on and so on, that they want to learn and experience in this lifetime. So that's why they don't allow that. Yeah, it's a pretty complex question,
So
complex answer, but yeah, I love it.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's just part of like the ethics of it, right?
Yeah.
Of doing spiritual work and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there are some, so not all cases, but in some cases, birthmarks. If you ever see a birthmark on somebody,
Hmm.
what can happen is, it's more common in places like India and places like that, and uh, Eastern culture, is that what they can do, and it's not super common, but it can happen, is what they can do is before the person dies. So let's say, for example, Grandpa in India, before he dies, they might like blemish his body, like stain it, so that when
Okay.
he is incarnated into another lifetime, he'll have that same birthmark. And then if they find him and notice him, then they go, "Oh, that's Grandpa." How do they know? Because they put a very identifiable birthmark on that person. So not every birthmark that someone's born with is because of that, but some are. And I do know some
Mhm.
people that I grew up with that actually had birthmarks. And when I checked psychically, if that's what happened, it actually is. So but I don't agree with that either, because again, it's interference, right? Like, even if
Yeah.
you did find that person, you shouldn't be interfering in that person's life, that child's life.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you don't know what they planned, what they decided in their blueprint that they needed to learn, or what their path. Yeah. Like,
Yeah, that's a very eloquent way of saying it. Yeah, I like it.
yeah, you're
So, well,
interfering with their free will.
yeah. Welcome
Yeah.
everyone to the Ask Ken show. If you're watching or if you just tuned in, say chat, put a chat in the chat box and say hello, your name, where you're from. I'll give you a shout out. And also, if you have any questions about spirituality, about channeling, about just spiritual stuff in general, I will live channel the answers. So go ahead and put that question in the chat box, and Iona will share the question, and then I can live channel the answers. Yeah, welcome. Okay, go ahead, Iona. Next question.
Yeah. So next question is, how can I differentiate between my spirit guides and my own thoughts or stuff, or my stuff?
Yeah, yeah. So that's the number one most important thing. I had a feeling when I was talking earlier, some people were asking, well, how do I know if it's my stuff or my spirit guides? That's the number one thing that every single student who comes to me to learn how to channel struggles with or wants to
Hmm.
learn. And that's why I focus on a whole bunch of different exercises. So I'll give you some tips right now on how you can differentiate between your own stuff and what's coming from your spirit guides. Um, Remember that your spirit guides, so going back to foundational stuff, foundational is your spirit guides are people like you and I in non-physical form. So I teach angels and other things like that later, but let's just talk about spirit guides for now. And um, let's say you're a female, you're a woman, and you have a male spirit guide that comes in. If you try to listen to his voice, that's called clairaudient,
Hmm.
you'll notice that his voice is going to be much deeper. He might talk slower, more calm than your own thoughts. So that's why it's important. Like, the question I ask my students is, do you ever think about what you say before you say it? And a lot of people are like, no. Some people might be like sometimes, but not, but do you ever think about what you say before you say it? Like, do you ever go, oh, I'm about to say this thing, but maybe I should think about this first before I say it? And then some people are like, "Oh, I just have like, I don't think I just, spill everything that comes to me. I just say it." I'm like, it's not necessarily a good thing, but okay, whatever. Like, they act like it's a good thing. I'm like, not necessarily. Like, that's probably can get you in trouble at times. But then let's take that concept a bit further. Do you ever think about what you think about? Do you ever like think about the thoughts? Think about like your thoughts. Do you ever like go, "Oh, why am I thinking this? Oh, what's going on in my mind right now?" Like, do I ever like watch my thoughts and think about my thoughts and like analyze my thoughts and wonder why I'm thinking this thought? So I don't know about you, but oftentimes,
Hmm.
let's say something's bothering me, but I'll go on and on and on. My thoughts would just replay the same scenario over and over and over again, sometimes
Hmm.
for hours, sometimes for days. And I'm like, and then, but when you're aware of what your thoughts are, then you can control them. There's really, really powerful things, and it can be also very healing. So sometimes, like, I'll notice my thoughts will be thinking about the same scenario over and over and over again, and I'll be like, Ken, like, why are you thinking this? You've been going over this like over and over again. Like, stop. You don't need to keep thinking this. Like, stop already, right? But
Hmm.
if we're not aware of it and we're just letting um, our thoughts run rampant. So think of it like, you have a house and the house is your house, and you go out for the day and you let the kids let loose, so that uh, what do you call it, a misbehaved child, you know just ruining the house, kicking holes in the walls, smashing things, breaking things, and then you come in and you don't stop the kid. You just let the kid keep doing that. It's like, no, you'd be like, okay, whoa, whoa, wait a second, what's going on here? Stop! No, can't be doing this, right? Maybe
Hmm.
kid in the corner and give him a timeout for a bit. something like that, and just like tell them like you need to just calm down, and we're not allowed to do this anymore. We're not allowed to wreak havoc and trash the house. And what's the house? The house is your mind, your psyche, and that's not allowed anymore. But who's in control? Are your thoughts in control, or are you in control? And
Worry.
when
Well,
Yeah, that's right. And when you're aware of your thoughts and you're actually paying attention to your thoughts, then you can be. But if you're not aware, like that child is just wreaking havoc in that house, and you don't even realize it. You're not aware of it because you're so oblivious to it with your own stuff. But when you're aware of it, then you could. That's the first step of it, the beginning of it. Then you can actually stop that child from continuing on with this. And then so over time, you practice getting to know your thoughts. You practice to getting to know your psyche. And again, try your best not to judge it, because if you're like me, sometimes my thoughts are very erratic. Sometimes they're usually negative. Um, what is it? We have something like 80,000 thoughts in a day, or no, 50,000 thoughts in a day, and 80% are negative, is what scientists think. When they study stuff like psychology and that.
mhm.
I I'm like, what? 80% is negative, and then when I actually think about it, I'm like, yeah, okay, I can see that. So there's
Yep.
probably truth to that. Um, but when we're aware of our thoughts and we watch our thoughts, then we can try to reframe them. So that's reframing is just a fancy term for a psychological term for flipping it from negative to positive. And so
Mhm.
there's a bunch of techniques that I teach my students on how to do this. Um, there's a technique that I developed. I call it the short circuit technique. When you notice your thoughts thinking negative and it's going down in this negative spiral, then I say stop, and you short circuit it so it doesn't keep going, and then you reframe it into positive, and you start thinking positive thoughts, or do something different than letting that get you down, and then next thing you know, you're in a depressed state and all that. So for the most part, people's thoughts are very erratic, very all over the place, usually negative, usually like scattered, usually very like aggressive, or like pokey, almost like pointy. Um, but when you hear your spirit guide, like let's say for example in this example, the male guide might be very like regular. Like you hear his voice, it's very regular. It's very point like to the point. It's not just all over the place. It has a purpose. His voice might be more deeper, more melodic, and more like calmer and relaxed. And you can tell over time the difference between his voice and your own thoughts. And then with practice, you can tell the difference between his voice and your own thoughts, his voice and your own thoughts. And that gap widens. And then with practice, you can say, oh no, I definitely know it's from my spirit guide because of this, and this, and not my own thoughts. And then let's say a female guide comes in and she has a higher pitched voice, but she might be also gentler and softer and more compassionate, and has some inflection in her voice, but it's not all over the place. It's still very regular, and all that stuff. So you can hear the difference between her voice and your own thoughts, which might be totally different, which will be totally different from each other. And then a gap
Mhm.
again, that gap will widen between your thoughts and her voice, your thoughts and her voice. Yeah. And that's just one example of how we can start to differentiate between, is this me making this up, or is it legitimately coming from my spirit guide? And it does take practice. It also takes some mentorship. Like when I work with students in a one-on-one setting, for example, I will actually go, when they give the answers, I'll check to see if it's accurate or not. And then I'll help them to differentiate between, okay, how does their voice sound? How do you know the difference? Oh, that's how. Oh, okay. Yeah, because their voice is like this, and this, where your thoughts are more like that. Yeah, that's right. And I'm teaching you and training you at the beginning of this of how to differentiate between the two. So it does take
Mhm.
practice, it does take mentorship. I recommend, yeah.
Yeah. Practice. All of it takes practice and like daily, right? Doing everything on the daily.
Yeah, and one thing also too, Iona, I want to really emphasize this to the people listening is keep it light, keep it fun. Don't be so hard on
Mhm.
yourself. What happens is when we're really hard and really serious on ourselves, what happens is it actually constricts the channel, so it makes it smaller. And it's like because you're like trying so hard, or you're being really hard on yourself, like why am I not getting this? And it just squeezes everything together. But when you relax and and you just have some fun and relax, then what happens is it actually dilates the channels so that they can get wider and allow it to flow easier and better. And that's a really important thing to note as well. Is so Iona knows the answer to this. Spirituality is meant to be what?
Fun.
Fun, right? Spirituality is meant to be fun.
Fun.
So let's keep things fun, keep things light as you're practicing. A couple things that I recommend. So those are very practical tips. I do if you want to write these down. The two things I recommend that you can do to practice is one is as you're going along your everyday life. If you notice your spirit guides' presence, don't ignore them anymore. They're usually trying to get your attention because they want to give you a message. Not always. Sometimes they're just hanging out. But let's say, for example, they do want to give you a message, then try to find somewhere quiet to go and receive that message. And then the second thing also is that if try to spend a little bit of time, allocate a bit of time, let's say 5 minutes every day. I usually do it first thing in the morning before I get out of bed, and I just spend a few moments and I feel where's my spirit guide around me. I connect with them, see which one it is, and see if they have any messages. Again, they don't always every morning, but they usually do. And then I practice, like I allocate time throughout my day to connect with them. And the reason why I do this, or the reason why I do this first thing in the morning, is because it sets the tone. Like um, when I was teaching and channeling my
Mhm.
or training my students, um, I would say, okay, your homework is until we meet next month. Let's say they're in my 6 month mentorship program. Your homework is to channel your spirit guides every single day. So then I would meet with them next month, and then I'd go, oh, okay. So when did you channel your spirit guides? Oh, today. I go, okay, great, that's good. And when did you channel them? They're like 6 p.m. I'm like 6 p.m., 6 o'clock. Well, what happened to the other 10 hours of the day? Like you didn't channel them throughout no, they're like, oh no, I just thought of it later after supper or whatever, and then after dinner, and then I was like, oh, I should connect with my spirit guides. I'm like, no, 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 no. But if you channel your spirit guides first thing in the morning before you get up, then you're more likely to continue channeling them throughout the rest of the day because they're like you put them in the forefront on the
Mhm.
front of your mind, and you're thinking of that, and then just practice and play with it and have fun. And if you feel those nuances like of them coming in and you feel their presence, don't ignore them anymore. Try to connect with them, and yeah, keep it fun, keep it light.
Yeah, definitely keep it fun and light. Um, enjoy it. Enjoy it. Um, I know, yeah, like and connecting first thing in the morning, like you said, it kind of sets you up. One, it sets you up in a positive way. Two, I feel like, if you connect with them first thing in the morning, like you said, you tend to like connect with them, reconnect throughout the day. And you want to do that because you want them to be there to help you make decisions and stuff throughout your life, right? Like
Yeah,
that's the whole purpose, is they are there for your highest and greatest good. So why would you not be consulting them a few times a day on things you know that you like, yeah, decisions that you're making, right? Like it's just.
yeah, yeah. There's two things that sometimes they're just like they'll come in and they'll give you these nudges, and you're like, oh, what, really? Oh, that's a great idea, thank you for that. And then
Mhm.
other times you have a certain situation, a circumstance going on in one of these areas of your life, so then you could sit quietly and ask them, okay, I have this relationship situation going on, how can you help me in this? Oh, and then you call in your relationship guide. Or I have this work situation, career situation going on, so you call in your career guide, and your career guide helps you with that situation, right? So like Iona said, and it only takes a few minutes. Like it doesn't have to be like a big ordeal. You don't have to go and do some weird like seance things, or like you can if you want, but you don't have to. You can just you know
Mhm.
I would often, when I was working corporate, working for the government, and I could feel my spirit guides trying to get my presence, I would just excuse myself. I would go down, go to the washroom. I'd sit in the stall. I wouldn't even like use the washroom. I would just sit there, and then channel my spirit guides. And then 3 minutes later, I would just like flush the toilet, pretend that I used the washroom, go out, wash my hands, and then leave. But I got the messages, and but I made time. Or if I'm in the middle of something, and I can feel their presence, I would be like, okay, just hold tight, wait till I can find somewhere quiet to go, and then I might go, to my car, or I might go to a park, or I might go to a bench, or I might go somewhere where I could just have a couple minutes to myself, and then I would try to breathe, calm myself down, ground, center, channel using source energy, and then connect
Mhm.
with my guide, and then start to receive the messages, stuff like that. But
Yep.
it doesn't have to be a big complex ordeal. I don't need to make it all weird. And then eventually, over time, as you practice this, you'll be able to what I call like live channel, where you just channel anywhere. And that's where I'm at now. That's where I try to, as I take my students through all the different channeling levels, I actually take them through exercises to practice that, where they can practice channeling with their eyes open, live and
Mhm.
on the spot, so that they can start to integrate it into their everyday life. So they can do it when they're at work, they can do it when they're with friends, they can do it when they're at home by themselves, they can do it while they're driving, they can do it while they're walking down the street, wherever they're at, they can channel. And that's what I want all my students
Yep.
to get to. That's the ultimate goal. And it's like just like we can channel anywhere, anytime, on the spot, in the moment, any situation, any circumstance.
Yeah. Yeah. Get to the point where it's like second nature. Like it's
Yeah.
just yeah.
But it takes time at the beginning to
Yep.
practice this. So, yes, we all have busy lives, but take a bit of time to just play with it, practice it every single day. And then eventually, over time, it becomes a part of you and it integrates into you. And then you don't do
Mhm.
channeling anymore. You are channeling, it just becomes you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's fun.
exactly.
Super cool. All right.
Super cool.
Looks like we're at the hour, Iona.
We are at the hour. Yes.
Woohoo!
Woo.
Thank you, everyone, for
Really great
tuning in.
session.
Uh, welcome to the This is the Ask Ken show. I do it once a month. If you have any questions, just send them in, and then tune in next time, and we will put those questions up so you can get your questions answered. Anything about spirituality, and also feel free to visit my website channelinginc.com. You will find all my monthly events that I do on a monthly basis. There's a lot of them, and if you have any questions, just feel free to message myself or Iona, and she can answer those questions for you. And we'll talk to you all soon. See you, everyone.